Town full-line outdoor sporting products and gear store. An interactive talk show discussing self-defense, product reviews, shooting tips, safety, and more. Your calls, comments, and texts welcome at 343-0106. Now, here are your hosts, retired judge and certified NRA instructor Rusty Johnston and certified NRA law enforcement instructor Adam Strange.
They're gonna pry these guns right out of my hands when they come to take them away. I believe in the rights that my fathers gave me when they signed the Constitution that day. No misguided president or crooked politician with a greasy pocket be spared. When the hard-working man gets tired of your cry, it's gonna rain wrath, beware. Don't tread on me, I'm American free. You're not gonna take it away. I stand up to fight for my freedoms and rights. That's the price you'll have to pay. Don't tread on me, I'm American free. Red-blooded to the core. You ain't ever had a fight in your life like the fight that you're itching for.
Welcome to the Armed Alabama Show for May 30th, 2017. This is Judge Rusty Johnston hosting tonight. Adam Strange is a little under the weather, having come back from a long trip over Yankee Memorial Day weekend. Armed Alabama is Alabama's only firearms-based FM radio talk show that talks exclusively about firearms, the law regarding firearms, self-defense, and what you need to know to keep you and your family safe. As I said, it's the last day. We got one more day. No, one more day in May, tomorrow. So whatever you need to do in May, get it over with, I guess. And we're broadcasting on Mobile, Alabama's #1 news talk station, FM Talk 106.5. We're also broadcasting on Facebook Live. And the way you get to that is you go to Facebook, and in the search box up there, just type in Armed Alabama Radio, FM Talk 106.5, and that'll take you to the page, and it may be frozen with a button, like a play button. Press it, but you'll see me in front of the microphone right now, and if you like the page, which you ought to anyway, you'll get notifications when these are going live. If you're on kind of the edge of the viewing area, or you're getting ready to get in the car or whatever, you can listen to us, of course, anywhere in the world by going to http, of course, //fmtalk1065.com, and I'll skip all the hypertext stuff, or to armedalabama.com /radio-show. And both of those are the live audio streams of this radio show. So if you go on vacation or something, just remember you can always listen to us. And I tell you, for car trips, there's nothing worse to me than listening to music hour after hour. So you can go to the Armed Alabama webpage, and you can download audio programs of this show onto whatever media you like, a flash drive. You can put it on a CD if you have a CD player in your car, or if you have a car that plays a flash drive, you can listen to our show that way. If you like to see us, you can go to our YouTube channel. All of these programs are on the YouTube channel. Just put in Armed Alabama, and you'll get to the YouTube channel. And we've also got a lot of other good stuff there about, let's see, AR-15 sights would be one of them. Difference between clips and magazines, that's always an issue. But a lot of how-to type things, and that's a good one. But on this show, we talk about pistols, revolvers, shotguns, concealed carry, ammunition, training, and attacks on our God-given rights to protect ourselves and our families. You'll get no Marxism here, no progressivism, and certainly no PC unless you're talking about an IBM-type computer. Then we'll allow the PCs. As some topics, as a warning, some topics, where they got trigger warning, may not be suitable for our delicate flowers out there. And so if you're one of those that just screams and doesn't listen, why don't you turn the channel? I think NPR's All Things Considered is probably on. You can listen to a replay of that. and calm down with that kind of thing. The right to bear arms comes from the right of self-defense. They're intertwined. And as far back as easily traced to the 4th century Rome, you've got arma in armato summa jura sinit, and which means the laws permit the taking up of arms against the armed. And they use swords. We used AR-15s. It's arms is whatever it means for the day you're living in. Now, our right to keep and bear arms, of course, wasn't given to us by the government. It pre-existed the founding of the United States. When the individual colonies fought the Revolutionary War, had they not had arms, we would have lost pretty quickly. And actually, I read something interesting the other day that if you accounted for population change and all that, that the British Army was so large that they sent to the colonies, if you extrapolated that today, it would be an army of 3 million.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking about almost a Chinese army there, 3 million people. So it's really kind of amazing, but, it was meant to be, I assume. So we're here, and that all comes from a lot of the philosophers with natural right to revolt, revolution, or secession whenever conditions get to be such that, and it's all laid out in the Declaration of Independence, that your rights are being so oppressed. The Declaration of Independence lays out in specifics what their claims were that brought about this legal right to revolt. And you can just go through those and look at them, and you should. Most people stop after the first paragraph. But let's see. I'm going to jump into that quite yet. At about the halfway point, I'm going to have a trivia question to ask you, and I've got 10 nice silhouette targets. Would probably cost you, as a matter of fact, we'll throw in 12 because I want it to be worth your while. But they'd cost you at least 75 cents at the shooting range. I'm going to roll up 12 of those. We'll have them here at the radio station for you. But you're going to have to listen to a radio clip and tell us who that is. And just to kind of get everybody's mind thinking about that. Now, our number here is area code 251-343-0106. That will take a text, or it will take a phone call also. I don't know how that works, but somehow it works out pretty good. One of the things we're going to talk about tonight is why does it take 30 years to put a vicious killer to death? And that's what it took in order to put this character on death row last week. Can't recall his first name off the bat. Last name Arthur. 30 years and 3 trials and just nonsensical motions in order to put him to death. I'm going to tell you what he was really like. His lawyer told us all that an innocent man was put to death last week. That's kind of hard to believe when you consider his whole life history. I think he's probably like a lot of people I've sent to death row. That's the best time they ever had in their life was on death row. They were treated better, had three hots and a cot on death row as opposed to living on the street where they would have been. I want to tell you all, next week we have special guests on the show. Matt Kenovi will be in town for a visit. And we're going to try to set up something public-wise so y'all can come visit me and Adam and Matt also, probably over at Three Brothers Shooting Range. And, Paul, I'll call you later on about that. But maybe I'll tell you what I want to do is talk Matt into giving about a 30-minute demo because he was on the all-state pistol shooting team in Missouri. I mean, he is really something to see. And let us all watch him really do some shooting for half an hour or so and then drink some Coca-Cola or whatever weather is that day. But that'll be a week from tonight that he'll be on the show with us, so we'll do something later on in that week. I'll get into the Arthur case when we get back. But be thinking about that. What do you think about capital punishment? What are your ideas? And I'll tell you before the break, DNA is a real red herring. It's a smokescreen. It's seldom useful. but they always scream DNA, DNA, just run DNA. And we'll get into that at the break. We're going to step into a break. Remember, our number here is 251-343-0106. That takes a text or a phone call, either one. Turn on Facebook and go to our webpage, Facebook Live, Armed Alabama Radio, FM Talk 106.5, and you can watch us live. And we'll be back right after the break. Yes. Callers, hold on. I just want to make one point. I was mentioning, and when I'm asked me here about DNA, if I had my, I'm going to call it a sniper rifle, we'll just call it that, and someone is 50 yards away and I blow their heads off, I don't care if I've kept those rounds in my mouth for an hour. There's not going to be any DNA. And so when everybody screams about DNA, if I go into somebody's house or they come into mine and stab me 10 times, there'll be a lot of DNA everywhere. But most cases, in fact, I would say probably 2 or 3% of the cases involve DNA. And I've questioned, always on capital cases, they'll say, I won't convict anybody unless there's DNA. And my question would be, I'm not talking about this case, ma'am, because I really don't know the facts. I'm like you. But let's say, for an example, that 12 people that knew a defendant quite well witnessed this. There was a video camera running. An expert testified the video has not been touched, and it shows the stabbing or killing, whatever, perfectly, and you can identify the defendant. And then the murder weapon is found in the defendant's home. And you're saying you have to have DNA? Oh, well, maybe I didn't mean it that way. Well, see, all the CSI stuff and all has just thrown the DNA thing in, and these anti-death penalty lawyers, they don't want the death penalty under any circumstances whatsoever. And they cling on to the DNA now. This latest one, Arthur, they started talking about how he was suffering. Well, you know, I had a couple of relatives die of terrible cancer where their morphine dosage was being doubled every day. They suffered. This guy didn't suffer. We all have had, unfortunately, pets, beloved pets we've had to take to the veterinarian. And what do we say we're doing? We're putting them out of their misery. We're being humane. That's what happened to him. He really should have had the gallows. That's the way to treat him, unless the public and people liable to do something like that see it. It's like it didn't happen. But let's take, is it Sellers, our next caller? Yeah. Hey, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Fine. How about you?
I'm doing great. I love your show.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a permit question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I have an enhanced concealed weapons license in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And moved back to Alabama recently. And, of course, that license is, valid for another probably 3 or 4 years. And I was curious if I needed to go ahead and get an Alabama permit because I didn't want to lose the enhanced permit in Mississippi.
I know. You should have moved. Give us a 30-second. I know what it is, but I want to tell the audience what an enhanced permit is in Mississippi. What does that entitle you to do?
Well, it entitles you to carry your pistol in a lot of locations that certain businesses that say you cannot bring a weapon in. You're allowed to also in certain establishments and except like courthouses or the police station.
Right. And it's like 8 hours of training, maybe something like that?
Correct. It's live fire training and the NRA pistol class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a one because it's kind of carrot and stick. The people that want, extra privileges, they work for them and the state rewards them. You don't have to do that. But the bad news is both Mississippi and Alabama say when you move within a certain number of days, and nobody's going to take it on a calendar, you become a resident of Alabama and that you've got to get an Alabama permit.
Okay.
And so you'll just be a commoner again.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, I guess I would lose the privilege in Mississippi. I do travel a lot.
Yeah, by being I don't think Mississippi has what they call out of you want to check, but I don't think they have out of state permits. Some states do for non-residents. I'm almost positive they don't, but you might want to double check that. Handgun law. Chase, tell me yes or no, is plural. No plural. Handgunlaw.us is a good place, or I've always found the best place to go is to the attorney. Just Google Attorney General State of Mississippi, and they usually had it all laid out there.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Take care. Yeah, that's a good program. Let's see. We got Ed in Mobile. How you doing, Ed?
Hey, Judge, I'm doing good. Thank you for taking my call. I'm for the death penalty, but I have a question. Many years ago, I heard the cost involved in sentencing someone to death row versus sentencing them to life in prison without parole. But do you know what that cost is today, what the comparison is?
I've seen that before, but I can't rattle it off. And, the problem with all of those things, I've got a sheet that has economic or societal cost of crime. And, for instance, the average cost of a burglary is $12,000. And, somebody may say, well, they only took $1,500 from my house. Well, that didn't include the police response, extra insurance premiums, all of that. Getting to that, a cost of a murder is $3.5 million. And this guy that I'm getting ready to tell you about, and I may as well do it with you on the phone, he committed the murder for which he was executed for while he was on work release, where there are no bars on the windows, from another murder. Wow. And he had just served 5 years. And so he walked out of course, and then as he was, of course, the case kept getting reversed, either on waiting the second retrial or the third, he, at gunpoint, escapes from jail, shoots the jailer through the neck with a .25 auto, thank God he didn't die, flees, and he was caught while robbing a bank by the FBI in another state. So that's the problem. You got somebody with nothing to lose. The problem is the time lag. I think it almost becomes meaningless to execute somebody 30 years later. I've got a good quote from Blackstone, if I can find it, which says what we're all thinking. If you don't go ahead and do it fairly quickly, then it won't remind people of the offense and the punishment. It'll only just be a horrible spectacle.
Exactly.
And I think that makes us. But it's like we really don't have the resolve to do it the way it's stalled out, the way it is.
I think in Alabama they get like 21 appeals, and attorneys paid for by the taxpayers on each one.
Well, it's it's even weirder. Technically, it's one appeal, but if you get your case reversed, then it's another appeal from that case. Then you can file a Rule 32, which means. And they always do that. The lawyers encourage them. My lawyer was incompetent, my trial lawyer, even though he wasn't, and they love each other. But they want him to do that, to throw a monkey wrench in it. And then when they finished all of that may take 7 years, the Congress passed a law 40 years ago that gives them a federal right to go into federal court, and they almost relitigate the whole thing again.
Wow.
I mean, it's just
crazy.
It really is. I mean, you want to make sure you got the right person, but, there's a point. Like this guy, it looks like to me from looking at him, he at least committed 12 other felonies. Let's just assume he was totally innocent of this one. It's not like we pulled me and you off the street and executed us. This is a bad guy.
Exactly.
But it's nice to have somebody like you that thinks about these things.
Yeah, I think about 25 years ago, they had estimated it cost, a little over $3 million to put them on death row and go through everything you got to go through to finally execute them, versus about $500,000 for the average life without parole.
I kind of remember that sounds right,
So,
But that includes fixed costs that the DA's already going to be there, the judge is already going to be there, so it's hard. It's like who's doing the figure. And But we definitely either got to improve it or just get rid of it, because I don't know that it's
Exactly.
serving its function now.
Okay, well, I appreciate it,
Thank
Judge.
you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. I love
care.
the show. Bye-bye.
Hey, Judge, I wanted to ask
Yep.
you a question, dude. Did I hear just a hint that there, on the part of some attorneys, there might be a motivation to continue 20 and 30 years worth of appeals?
Yeah. Some of these
Is
people.
there money to be made?
Well, I get it. It's more of a political ideology. There's probably money too. Equal Justice Initiative is one. They're in Montgomery. The Innocence Project is another. And it just, whatever the ludicrous, well, the latest was they got this execution stopped for a little while, claiming you can't guarantee that this will be painless. When the Constitution...
But it wasn't painless to the victims.
Well, when the Constitution was ratified, is what you should interpret. Hanging was the general mode of execution. And I guarantee you, so when you compare it to hanging, this is not cruel and unusual. And that's just insane. If I had to pick my poison, give me a lethal injection over getting hit by a car or getting eaten up with cancer.
Firing squad would be quick.
Well, I think that would be real manly. I've always thought about that, having a cigar, no, I don't want anything over my eyes. Just
No last words.
Yeah, just go ahead. And I'll tell you about Marshall Ney meeting the firing squad when we get back with Armed Alabama, Alabama's only FM-based radio talk show dealing with firearms, etc., on Mobile's #1 news talk channel, FM Talk 106.5. Remember our number here.
And also, Rusty, I want to tell everybody that we're also watching the text line and that you can text in your thoughts at the same number.
That's right. Somehow that works. We'll see you back after the break. I mentioned William Blackstone. He was a writer, a judge, a lawyer in Great Britain in the 18th century, 1700s, and he wrote kind of the series of books kind of putting together English law, which is just all scattered around. And matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson said, even after the United States was formed, he said, American lawyers cling to Blackstone like Muslims cling to the Koran. But Blackstone wrote regarding executions, and throughout the kingdom by statute, I won't mention statute, it is enacted that in cases of murder, the judge shall, in his sentence, direct execution to be performed on the next day but one after sentence is passed. It has been well observed and that it is of great importance that the punishment should follow the crime as early as possible, that the prospect of gratification or advantage which tempts a man to commit the crime should instantly awaken the attendant idea of punishment. Delay of execution serves only to separate these ideas, and then the execution itself affects the minds of the spectators rather as a terrible fright than as the necessary consequences of the transgression. And that's Blackstone in his Commentaries on the Law of England in 1787 edition. And, that just makes sense. What they're saying, he's saying is don't delay it 30 years.
Judge, those people who favor the death penalty as a deterrent to others, is it more of a deterrent if the punishment or the execution is done quickly?
Yeah.
Because
I don't think as it is any deterrent at all.
30 years later, everybody's forgotten all about it.
Yeah, I don't think it's any deterrent right now. It may be proper vengeance on part of society. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think it acts as a deterrence.
Public hanging?
I think so. And the origin of us getting away from a public execution was, we invented the new technology of an electric chair. Mm-hmm. We used to have hangings in every county, and I think on our Facebook page somewhere I've got a picture of the Mobile's county gallows. And but when they invented the electric chair, of course it was too expensive, so they you shipped them to the state penitentiary to be executed. That's when it became kind of secret, and the problem is kind of like Bin Laden was he really killed? I mean, I think he probably was, but unless you really see it with your own eyes, or does it really make an impact?
Well, does part of this have to do with the requirement that there be a small group of witnesses at any execution?
That's kind of what makes it public, but that's just a farce. You and I would not go to a public execution.
No.
But the people who would need to be there, because they're the type that might think, maybe I need to control myself a little better. Or
should young people go too?
It would depend. I think
a
young person.
I don't think I'd take a 5-year-old. But
I wouldn't take a young
15-year-old.
person that's never been in trouble, because that whole Scared Straight program.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research on that one time, and it was actually a total failure. If you took children who were not prone to be criminals, who'd not been in trouble, and you exposed them to that, they were so horrified that it actually caused an increase in crime among that age group.
Got a personal experience. 7th grade, Hutchinson, Kansas, that public school system in Lyons County, I think. We had to tour the state reformatory, and it was a prison with 40-foot high solid walls, and and I wouldn't intend on doing any crime. And we went through it, and we saw them working in the laundry. We saw their cells. The guards talked to us. Mm-hmm. And basically we left there saying, well, I don't really want to go there, but nobody was scared particularly.
Though, if all of that worked, then all we'd have to do to get people from stop smoking is just to walk them into the cancer ward at the hospital.
Sure.
And then, same thing with drinking. And it's so much more complicated than that. But I do know, because my children's school had Edmund, if you're listening, it was before you were judge, but they had a tour of Strickland. And I don't know, it just didn't hit me right. I didn't want my daughter going. So I did a little research, and wow, this all opened up about how that would actually the Justice Department stopped funding it. And, I went overboard, of course, and did like about a 40-page legal brief with all the sources why they shouldn't take their children out there, and that was they didn't do it anymore. But it's one of those things. If it sounds good, that's fine. But until you do the research, that's how we do our gun training. Unless it's research based, it's just an idea you've come up with.
Well, I know you weren't a juvenile judge.
Fortunately,
but
I tried. I think the youngest person I tried was 12 or 13.
So you got some
who had murdered someone. Yeah,
but the thought that and this is from a former school teacher point of view, the kids that got sent to Strickland, and this is in no means negative toward the staff that works there or anything else. But if anything, those kids, after they did their stay in Strickland, came back, they were worse than before they went. It's like they became better criminals.
We're operating on a broken model. The one we're operating worked in 1900 when kids were delinquents. You're getting kids now whose first offense is burning the house down. Mm-hmm. It isn't slapping stealing candy and slapping the store owner. I mean, it's that kind of violence. And that's where we need to kind of separate truly troubled kids from criminals. And the criminals just need to be kept away from us.
Well, the thing of it is, if a child goes in and does a period of time living there, they're going to get pointers from other thugs and criminals on how to do other crimes.
They either do that or they get abused, and we all know about abuse. People who are abused tend to become abusers. Mm-hmm. And so Charlie's amazing. A lot of kids that wind up at Strickland, the reason they're there is their mother or father calls the police on them. And I'll never forget, we had a diabetes.
Sometimes because they can't handle them.
Yeah. Had a diabetes support group here, and so the doctor would tell everybody to call me for some reason. And I'd talk to anybody that called it. This woman was having trouble with her kid, and she called Strickland, and then she's calling me saying that she didn't know I was a judge. She said, he's out at Strickland, and they're not giving him his insulin. They're not doing this and that. And I said, let me give you a hint. Next time your kid skips school, don't call the police. You need to try to deal with that because the government does everything pretty poorly, and to have them try to straighten your child out, it ain't going to happen.
Maybe a belt would help.
Well, you know what? You're exactly right. And a bar of soap when those filthy words come into their mouths.
Yeah.
But, you hear the...
I can still taste ivory.
Oh, me too. Me too. And, of course, I'm better not admit to anything here. But, I saw Justice Scalia say this very same thing. The F word is so common that you hear everywhere. And he said, the people that I associate with, he's talking about Scalia, he said, they don't use that kind of language. But it has become so coarse. At one time, and maybe I still do, if I'd hear that kind of language, I think, you're trash. I don't.
Well, and if you want your daughters to grow up to be worthwhile people, sit them down in front of the television and force feed them the Housewives of Atlanta or Beverly Hills and all of that stuff. And boy, you'll get wall-to-wall examples of how not to behave.
There was a YouTube video I need to put up. It was on the Blue Lives Matter site. A woman starts screaming. They say, crazy woman screams at couple kissing. Well, I think they were doing a little more than that, but I put a comment under it. I said, I'm afraid that was me 25 years ago because we were on a monorail and the children were little, and we've got a young couple just, we used to call it necking, but it was, next thing I knew, I'm just in their face screaming, why don't you get a GD hotel room?
Yeah.
I mean, I thought, and I don't care whether it's gay, straight, transgender. I don't want that going on in public. I mean, that's why we have hotel rooms.
I kind of have trouble with my wife just holding hands walking down the mall or doing something in public.
Me too. I'm uncomfortable with public displays of affection.
I have a big question for you. Do you want to give away your targets now, or you want to wait till after the break, 2 minutes from now?
Let's go after the break, but get your Wayback Machine ready because I'm going to play you about a 1-minute audio clip of a politician. That's all I'll say. And if you can identify who it is, we've got 12 silhouette targets, great for shooting, and we'll have them here at the station for you. And, of course, that's 251-343-0106. And you can't text your answer, but if you want to text a question to it, you sure can. We got a minute and a half because I want to go through some with stuff that the guy executed last week.
Okay.
He was, while accused of this murder, he was living in a worker release center, which he walked out of, apparently, after only serving 5 years for a prior murder, and he also assaulted someone during the course of that murder. So you've got a murder and an assault one he committed. May not have been prosecuted for the assault one. So he is arrested, and he's waiting to stand trial, and he escapes from the jail by shooting the guard. So you've got an escape first degree, 2 to 20 years, certain person forbidden to possess a pistol 1 to 10, assault 1, another one that's really is 20 to life because of the gun, and then bank robbery with the gun, 20 to life. And, that just does not look like to me what an innocent person would look like. Call me a cynic, but it just doesn't look like that. And they are on and on like that. Remember our number, 251-343-0106. This is FM Talk 106.5 in Mobile, Alabama. Mobile's #1 news talk channel covering 3 states, the southern end of 3 states. Southern end is the best end, I think we think. I kind of look at the northern part of Alabama like this another region. We'll be back, though, after the break. Before I throw our question out, I want to run this by,
I would not want to get that phone call.
I wouldn't either. Just got Neil Gorsuch confirmed, but as I've told people, we've had a battle since the nation was found. I don't want to use the word nation because I think since the United States was founded, over justices, it's really a fight over centralized authority versus dispersed authority, the federal system. And Thomas Jefferson wrote his former Treasury Secretary, Albert Gallatin, when he was working for Madison, and he says, "I observe old Cushing is now dead," and he capitalizes dead with an exclamation point, who was a justice on the Supreme Court. He says, "At length, then we have a chance of getting a Republican majority on the Supreme Judiciary. For 10 years, that branch has braved the spirit and will of the nation. The event is a fortunate one, so timed as to be a godsend to me." So the problem is they looked and finally put Joseph Story on there, who I think was probably one of the worst justices they could have thought about putting on there. But all right, this is a man from history. I will tell you he's not alive now, but if you can name him, you got 12 silhouette targets.
Can I give a slight hint?
No, let's see how smart they are.
If you are a lifelong resident of the Gulf Coast,
You should know
you
this.
should know this. Was that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were ready to hear the clip?
Yep.
Okay.
The Democratic Party and the Republican Party was just like the old patent medicine drummer that used to come around our country. He had 2 bottles of medicine. He'd play a banjo and he'd sell 2 bottles of medicine. One of those bottles of medicine was called Hypopalorum. And another one of those bottles of medicine was called Lopapahara. Finally, somebody around there said, "Is there any difference in these medicines?" Oh, he said, "Considerable. They're both good, but they're different." He said that Hypopalorum is made from the bark off the tree that we take from the top down. And that Lopapaharum's made from the bark that we take from the root up. And the only difference that I found between the Democratic leadership and the Republican leadership was that one of them was skinning from the ankle up and the other one from the ear down when I got to Congress.
He sort of gave another hint at the end, didn't he?
I was going to say, right, he's from a line of orators that, we don't have anymore because of television. Yeah. That's kind of been ruined. But one of the greatest, of course, Cicero is probably regarded in history as the greatest orator ever. And, of course, he was allegedly involved in the plot to kill Julius Caesar, which Caesar should have been killed. He was establishing a dictatorship. But to make an example of Cicero, when he was murdered, his hands were cut off and his tongue was cut out and nailed to the Roman Senate because he was an orator. He talked with his hands and his tongue just to say, hey, this is what happens to people that screw with Julius Caesar. So
you're saying our orators are all going away, and I think so are our statesmen. I
tell you, the best orator there is out there in English is Nigel Farage in Great Britain. Watch him sometime. I had some clips here. He is a good orator. He's funny, but he's witty, cutting. He can do it all. Do we have a winner?
We got a winner, I think.
All right.
Peter.
Hello, gentlemen. This is Peter from Pensacola. How are you doing?
Hey, what you think?
I think that is Huey P. Long.
You got it. I was just telling them it's kind of like Confederate monuments. I may not have agreed with Huey Long, and didn't, but he's a historic figure.
Yes,
and he ought to be remembered and cherished in that way because he's a great orator.
He's got statues in New Orleans, don't he?
Oh, I'm sure he does. And, the other thing about Long is that first time I saw him, a film of him, I honestly thought it was a comic actor. And
Paul Newman, the movie Blaze.
Oh, yeah. Didn't I was forced to read All the King's Men, which was allegedly about him, and it was so boring. Since you're over in Pensacola, Phil, why don't we can get these mailed to you. You don't want to drive over here, and we'll get them mailed to you. That won't be any problem. And
but you're going to have to give Phil your address.
Yeah, hang on the line. Let me get Phil back on there for you. Unless you want to say anything else, don't want to cut you off.
Gentlemen, as always, I tell you, join your state organizations because they're the ones doing the lion's share of the work. They're the ones who represent you where it counts most in the state legislatures.
Yep.
You see that Texas has had a little bit of interesting times themselves.
Right.
But I can tell you, their increased gun rights wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the Texas State Rifle Association.
You're exactly right. You got to battle in both places, and I know that's going on in Florida too. So
That's right.
you got to do that.
Even though we've got a great chief executive who's favorable to gun rights, we had a break after Thanksgiving. Now we got to still stay at work.
You got to constantly be vigilant. No question about it.
All right, Peter,
Thank you.
hold on for Phil.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody is so comfortable. Well, we got the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment wasn't even made applicable to the states or incorporated against states until 2008. And in fact, I was with one of the lawyers yesterday that argued the case for the Supreme Court. And all the Supreme Court said when you cut through it all is you have the right guaranteed to own, keep a handgun in your home for your personal protection. That's all they said.
Yeah.
So everybody applies it sweepingly. Every time, the Bill of Rights weren't meant to apply to the states, and every time they applied them to the states, the decent people lost. Because when they were applying them, they were applying them saying, you can't decide whether or not your children, well, I'll give you the perfect one. Charlie remembers these days when we actually used to have obscene movies. No such thing as obscene movies anymore because states and localities could make that decision. Now the Supreme Court's just eviscerated that. And we've got one standard for San Francisco that applies to, some little town in the Midwest where, everybody goes to church. And that's the way the Constitution was written. Each state had the option to do certain things.
Yeah, I just love it when somebody says, I really can't define obscenity, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah. And the word itself implies illegality. So, other than child porn, there's nothing that's obscene anymore. And would any of you, of course, my grandmother's been dead 40 years, but would any of you show, the type things there is to your grandmother?
Hey, back in the Ozzie and Harriet TV days, they couldn't even show a couple in bed together.
Right.
Married couple in bed together.
And on this program, we still enforce, and I try to do on the webpage, is the 7 dirty words. And, if you need to make a point, put F -- whatever. But don't. Like I say, you just come across crude to me when that language starts.
I think it just cheapens your argument.
I think it does too.
If you don't really have a strong foundation for your point of view, just cover it up with profanity. And
9 times out of 10, I found it's left-wingers that do that because you make a point and then it's just this barrage of profanity back at you. And it's just mindless. And I've put up a couple of videos. If you'll go to the Judge Rusty Johnston page, you can see these of one very liberal, one moderate law professor saying what I have about Trump. What's the crime he's being accused of? What code section is this? Just because the media keeps saying, you met with Russia. It's not illegal to meet with people from Russia.
I'd rather talk to them and then exchange missiles.
It's the same people, the media, that covered up for Joe Stalin when he killed 5 million people. That was Walter Durrani, who they actually won a Pulitzer Prize, the New York Times did. They said there's no signs of any kind of famine over here, and he was deliberately starving people.
Well, the media just, on a personal gut level, hate Trump, and they're going to do
yeah.
And it's continuous, day after day, barrage of negative
If I've got enough time, I'll tell you the secret behind the Nixon prosecution that nobody bothered to publish. We'll be back after the hour break with more of Armed Alabama. 1 more hour to go. All right, welcome back to Armed Alabama, Hour 2. This is Judge Rusty Johnston, and I am flying without a co-pilot tonight. Adam Strange is kind of whipped from being on a vacation, and those are a lot of... He's stove up from being on the vacation.
Got to come back to work to rest.
A lot of those old words that we just have faded out of vocabulary. I'm actually working on a long needed paper on... it's not necessarily limited to Southern, but it is.
Yeah,
Southern nicknames.
Stove up. What does that mean?
Well, this one is Southern nicknames.
Yeah.
And I think there are probably two reasons. One, nickname is generally the recipient of the nickname. Yours truly does not like being nicknamed. But second is that because of government, computers and all, they want to get your name right, even though they still screw it up. They'll put in the wrong spelling or whatever. But, nicknames were so common. I was born in the late 50s, but they're very rare now, and there's several different kinds. You've got nicknames related to family status. Let's say like a Trip, who would be the third, or a Chip. Then you have them related to physical characteristics, like me, a Rusty, a Whitey, a Slim. And then you have also family character. Bubba was the brother, Sis. And then you just have some that have just come out of nowhere, and I won't mention some that I know about here. But Happy, we had a lot of people, and I knew 3 Happies. But it is pretty rare that you find a nickname. All the politicians used to have nicknames. I remember when I was young, you'd always see that.
It'd be like their middle name.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of interesting, I used to have prisoners call. It would be Judge Rusty, and I get letters from prisoners, and I thought, well, that's fine. You're getting a little too familiar.
Did you ever get thank you letters?
Oddly enough, yes, and I got one. I won't mention the details because he is our Facebook friend. But he wrote me, years after the event, and said, and I won't remember the exact language, I have been meaning to thank. I didn't know it was after I left the bench. Thank you for sentencing me to prison. Well, I kind of gulped when I saw that. I thought, and I'm going to come by and kill you.
Yeah, you're waiting for the rest of it.
That straightened me out. I had a terrible drug problem, and blah blah blah. And I thought, wow, it's rare where you really turn somebody. By the time they get to circuit court, they're usually pretty bad off. The time to turn somebody around is way before circuit court, but occasionally I would get those, and it was it was nice to see. Now, any of you watching, you can go to Facebook and watch me here, and my hair looks so bad, and that's not for. I tried, and Johnny Sullivan over at Johnny Sullivan's Haircuts, he was going to take care of me before I got here, but I just got so rushed I couldn't make it. But if you need a great barber, Johnny's over there, 3694 Airport Boulevard, the service road where we used to all cut through to go from Airport Boulevard to Dolphin Street, where the apartments are, Yester Oaks Apartments. But he's kind of in that cubby hole back there. But there are not a lot of real barbers left. And
there really aren't.
Because my old barber I had for 25 years retired a year or two ago, so I had to switch to Johnny. And, I hope he keeps going 10 years, but he's of the age where he's not going to be around a lot longer. And we've just got a lot of hair. They actually have cosmology licenses. And I just don't think since I kind of tend to get a military haircut, they just don't go with me. But, there are a lot of changes that I guess maybe I don't know. I want to mention this. Any of you people that are interested in the war between the states, a.k.a. Civil War, official name is War of the Rebellion, which is kind of a oxymoron. How do you have a war and a rebellion? War, Southern independence, whatever. Some of us are starting a Civil War roundtable. And if you look on the web, they're in a lot of cities. And they're educational, let's say, supper clubs, where they'll have a speaker speak on some subject that he's knowledgeable about the presentation. And it's not a formal, we get a membership card. No, you can come and go. You like a speaker 1 month, come. You don't have to come. But the first meeting here of the Mobile Civil War Roundtable is going to be June 19th, and that's at 5:30 p.m., and it's at the University of South Alabama Cafeteria Conference Room, and that's on the campus of South Alabama, and there's a separate private room to have this in, and they have an all-you-can-eat buffet for $7.45 plus tax, which is pretty good. That's 5:30 to 6:15 is dinner and fellowship, and then at 6:15 introduction, and then the featured speaker that night will be discussing secession, history and legality of secession from 1794 to today. And the featured speaker is talking to you on this microphone. Will be me. And so that's an interesting subject. And like I say, you don't have to be a son of whatever veteran or anything. If you just are interested in history, interested in that war, or interested in that topic. Love to have you out there. Like I say, it's by the way, the dress will be, whatever you want to wear. You want to wear a suit, fine. You want to wear short pants, fine. Just come on out if you're interested in that topic. I think that'll be good. And look you can see some good, on YouTube, some good videos of some good speakers speaking to, like the Chicago Civil War Roundtable. I think they've been going over 50 years. They're scattered all over the place. And you gave me a sign, and I didn't notice it. How much time we got, Mr. Producer?
A little over 2 minutes.
Okay, let's try to take Jed. And Jed, we may get squeezed, but let's give it a try. How you doing?
Hey, Judge, Charlie, how y'all doing?
We're doing great.
Good deal. Hey, I called about the Google chat thing you did last week.
Thank you, because I want to give a report on that, but go ahead.
Yeah, you told me, I was the one that was asking about the home defense shotgun compared to the carbine that you were talking about, and I don't really know the difference. Is a carbine like I tried to look it up.
I'm going to show you.
Similar to an AR or something?
Yeah, and I'm going to show you an extreme carbine here. And, of course, I've got, if you'll notice.
And for the benefit of radio,
later on
we're
Facebook.
holding this up in front of the camera.
Yeah, if you're not there, look later on Facebook. I've got a IWI Tavor, which is a bullpup, but it's the same idea. It's 28 inches in total length. Now, the barrel is still 18 inches long, but it's inside of the gun. So it makes the gun pretty short. But
so I'm on the phone and not looking at it. So does it have just a handle, or does it have a butt stock, or whatever you call it?
The butts, it's like it's all built into one. It's kind of hard to describe, but you can check it out in a little bit. And the idea is, but I'll tell you some other short carbine type weapons. M1 carbine, a new one, is about $7.99 that Auto Ordnance makes. Beretta makes one called a Beretta Storm, and it's about 4 inches longer than this. It's a good gun, and let's see, a couple of more. You can get some of the ARs that have adjustable stocks and the 18-inch barrels. They're not going to be a lot longer than this. AK-47, if it's got the right stock on it.
Now, the carbine that you're talking about now, is it the same when y'all were talking about the 5.5 that would shoot the 5.56 or the 223? Is that the same?
Yeah.
Same deal? Okay.
Yeah. And, what did you think about the chat? Frankly, I was surprised the technology worked.
Yes, sir. I enjoyed it.
So we're going to improve that. And, folks, well, I'll tell them after the break. I won't waste your time. But, I thought that did good, and we'll start doing it every 2 weeks. And we'll just see how it builds. If people want to keep doing it, we'll keep doing it.
Is it time for a commercial? Because I have one more question.
You go ahead.
Go ahead.
Are y'all going to have any of the, I don't know how to say it, competitors, people going for the Senate? Are y'all going to have any other guys on, or just Luther?
No, I know of one more. We're just trying to schedule a date. No, we'll schedule everybody that's running in.
Okay.
I just don't want to do it back to back. I think they get a little boring, but
yes, sir.
We got enough time to do that.
Good deal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We'll be back after the break. Any of you that halfway like science fiction, I don't mean weird stuff. I mean, this is good. The series is over now, but it was on maybe 8 years on Fox. It was called Fringe, and it each season had a different theme to it. But it was excellent program, excellent actors. I can't ever remember actors' names, but either the show made them or they were good going in. But that is a scene from Fringe, and where the people from the future have come back and taken over. and they regard us as dogs. And if we get out of line, he said he's going to take care of the crime problem instead of leaving it to the police guy there to take care of the crime problem. Let's see, I want to run through. We could not put the program on without our sponsors, and I want to welcome a new sponsor tonight. We'll start running their ads next week. That is Mike Ward's Liberty Safes, and that is his here actually in Mobile, and they have one in Louisiana, may have other ones. But one here in Mobile is at 961 West I-65. It's kind of near Moffett Road in that area, and they have a showroom over there. The number you would call would be 251-471-1137. Liberty Safes is what they sell. And one thing I want to mention, in my old office, State just gave you an office. Well, I got concerned. I've got dope in here and all kind of stuff. So I bought it's called the Liberty Safe 8. It's a smaller version, and the approximate measurements are, let's see, about 28 by 19.5 by 13.5 by 30 by 24. That's the outside. 30 by 24. But it's about this big. And listen, me and one of my law clerks, we really did a good job. We took the doors off to a cabinet, but we used lag bolts and bolted that thing down. First of all, it weighs 275 pounds, so it's going to take somebody pretty strong to lift it. But once that got put in, nobody was going to be – I wasn't going to be on O'Reilly, him screaming about why I let somebody steal marijuana out of the office. So welcome them aboard. And then, of course, we've got the folks that have been keeping us going all of this time. We've got Dr. Justin Foster, and he is out on Rangeline Road, kind of near Lowe's. Y'all know that where that is. You got a back problem or any kind of musculoskeletal problem, go out and see him. We had him on a few weeks ago, and he told us about that. And then we've got, I'm going to get him in my right, Grayson Air Conditioning. You all ought to remember that. It is getting that time of year. It's always better if you can do preventive maintenance than not. Get them to oil stuff, replace fan belts and all that kind of thing. So call them for all they're 24/7, but it's always better not to have to get something on Saturday because that part might not be available. We've got David Parnell, and he is with Palmer's Toyota, and see him for all your needs, not just, cars, trucks, used, new, whatever you need. See David out there, David Parnell at Palmer's Superstore. And then, of course, we've got the Ace Hardware stores in Spring Hill. We've got the Ace Hardware store in Creola, and that's Creola Ace Hardware and Lumber. And then Ace Hardware out on Moffett Road. And I paid a visit to the Spring Hill Ace on Saturday, I guess, and went in meaning to get one thing and came out. I can't remember, it was 83 or 183. I love
hardware
ton
stores.
Of stuff. But where would you find, a lot of people still have fans and lights that operate by a little chain. Rolls of different colored, is that little bead chain that you can have cut. If you need a 6-foot one or a 6-inch one, you can get it there. And just those things. And I'll emphasize again, I made sure they had them. The Master, can't think of the name they call it, but it's basically a brace you put up against the door. It goes under the doorknob, and the other side goes angled on your carpet or tile. And if somebody's trying to get into your hotel room or your bedroom, it's going to slow them down. They've got them up there at, I know Spring Hill Ace does. I'm sure all of the Aces do. There's something, if you got a kid going to college, get them one of those for their dorm room. They certainly need that. And law office of Matt Green. And, of course, McCoy's Outdoors. McCoy's has been so special to us. And, I've realized from doing the show, you get into stuff kind of like a lawyer judge does, and you don't realize that everybody's not as into stuff as you are. And that's what's so wonderful about McCoy's, that I can tell when people know something. They know something. I've been to gun stores before where, no disrespect, but the clerk was probably working at Circuit City before they closed. I mean, he just did not know anything. And you're not going to find that at McCoy's. And you need, if you're a first-time gun buyer or, you don't know the kind of guns available, just go down there and give them a try because they keep up with what's going on. You put your hand, that's too small, that's too big. They know a lot more than I do, and but I kind of get the feeling, well, people know what I do. Why do they need to go pick up 15 guns? Because they don't have all the stuff I have, and because we're gun nuts, and we say that affectionately, but we are. But they'll take care of everything you need down there. We like Wesley Parks, of course. He's the general manager, and if you need running shoes, that's the place to get them. I'm too old and decrepit to run anymore.
And camping gear, and I just want to say two things about McCoy's. One, if you go there, if you've never been, I promise you'll not want to go just once because you can't see everything in that store in one visit.
That's right.
And the other thing is, and they'll tell you back there when you're looking at handguns or long guns or whatever, there's no such thing as a stupid question because I came in with a bunch of what I thought were stupid questions. They very kindly, friendly answered my questions, let me handle several different guns to see which ones felt right to me.
And you're right. There is, I've got a video, I guess I put it up, Chase, on the Armed Alabama page. I think kind of the premise is safety begins at home. You always ought to be concerned about safety. And above all, when you're manipulating, learning how to work a gun, don't smoke pot and don't use live ammunition. And if something goes wrong, don't put it on YouTube. And say, young man who he's babbling about things he doesn't know about where he's just got to be on something. And at some point, the shotgun goes, bam, goes off, and you can see that look in his eye. So it's worth everybody looking at because anybody really into guns has had some type of, we used to call it negligent discharge, but, is it negligent or
I unashamedly say something else?
Yeah.
If you have an interest in joining this fine list of sponsors to support this show, there is still plenty of room for advertisements.
There is.
And how can they do that, Rusty?
Two ways. Either email either the judge at armedalabama.com, thejudge@armedalabama.com, no spaces, or Adam at armedalabama.com. Or I think you can go to our Facebook page, our website, our phone numbers are there, and get a hold of us because we're getting where we need to be. But, you never get just right, but we're getting where we need to be.
And it's not just businesses. You have individuals
like Matt Green, or if you want to help us out, anybody who gives $5 a month or more through Patreon, I need to put a notice out that you'll be invited to this every other week private chat. And the gentleman called in earlier about it. And what that was is everybody was watching me talking, but I was responding to questions that they would type in.
That was a private Google chat.
Yeah, and we're going to release it in a week or so, and everybody can listen to it. But it's better to be involved in it. And so that's really something neat. So that'll be a perk for the people that have been helping us out and supporting us. And, for $5 a week, you got to go to Patreon, www.patreon.com/armedalabama, and that'll get you in and kind of disregard what it's saying now. But $5, and you got to put it on a credit card so it can keep recurring. And make sure you give your correct email address because that's how you get invited. And the next one will be not this Thursday, a week from this Thursday. So that worked out pretty good. And I have to thank Chase for that because I kept reading how to do it, and I thought it's just like reading, whatever Aramaic to me. I don't. Greek would have been easy.
Judge, you and me are out there on the trailing edge of technology.
I know, and it's disappointing because I felt like I used to kind of know what I was doing 25 or 30 years ago, but not anymore.
It's hard to keep up. There's changes happening every day.
It is, and I'm glad there are people that keep up with that kind of thing. But
so here's to you, Chase.
I don't want to. But it worked. It was fun, and we can take 150, 200 people, so that's not a problem, and it's fun. But you got to have a computer or some way to get online, and you got to have, that's about it, a Google account or a YouTube account. And
an abacus won't work.
Right. It won't work. Or an old cell phone that
now
has
there's
an antenna.
some tech folks that may not know what an abacus is.
That's right. And we'll be back right after this break with more of Armed Alabama. Clint Eastwood, boy, he is eternal, although he's looking a little old now. But I can't imagine how many Clint Eastwood
movies. He could probably
movies.
still whip both of us.
He probably could. And, he's got some movie, remember Every Which Way But Loose, where he was with the orangutan.
Yeah, orangutan, yeah.
And Bronco Billy was a good, they weren't all shoot 'em up movies.
I like the spaghetti westerns, too.
Well, my father drugged me to every one of those things, and they were probably totally age inappropriate for me. But I remember being a little sickened after watching Hang 'em High when I was 7 or something like that. But he had some really good movies.
And then there was Rawhide before that.
Oh, yeah. Rowdy Yates. I can't believe I remember the name. Rowdy Yates.
On a wagon train.
Yeah. So, I'm just looking here at some, on my list. I posted it. I'm pretty sure if it's not on the Armed Alabama Facebook page, it's on the Judge Rusty Johnston page. Access to that's open. I'd like you to like it, but you can read anything on there, obviously. I like to post interesting legal, political type things. But I posted something a few weeks ago written by my old professor, Dr. Forrest McDonald, who unfortunately died last year, but he was, ripe old age. But he wrote a great article about the 14th Amendment and how it was not legally adopted. Now, I'm not one of those people that says, well, because of that, it's happened, it's over. But he analyzes all the shenanigans that went on during the process of adopting the 14th Amendment. And, that's the basis really for that and the Commerce Clause in particular and the Necessary and Proper Clause for the total federal takeover of state and local governments, and most people don't realize it's not supposed to be that way. If you want to really find out what the intent was of the framers, do not read the Federalist Papers. Don't even read the notes from the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. Read the notes of the Ratification Convention in the states. The state conventions approved the Constitution, and you can hear some of the people that wrote it represent what these things meant. And they represented, for instance, necessary and proper, meaning, that just means they have the power to buy incidental things like for the Army, the office. They've stretched that so they can do anything in the world, they want. And the Commerce Clause, has been stretched to the max. And John Marshall, who was one of them at the Virginia ratification, said the federal courts aren't being set up to displace the state courts. They're just there to handle admiralty cases involving foreign embassies, etc. That's not the case anymore. And Charlie, you asked a good question earlier. How do the federal courts get involved on these capital cases? Because Congress passed the Federal Habeas Corpus Act specifically for capital cases. And every prisoner has a right, and they all do, when we finish because we cause at least a 10 to 12-year delay.
In appeals.
Yeah, and I say appeals in just their post-conviction proceedings. Then they get switched over to federal court, and plenty of them are retried again. And that's what every trial judge was always conscious of. I'm spending this time, and I know 50 other judges are going to be looking over my shoulder, probably after I'm dead, second-guessing me.
After a dozen years, how do you go back and find all those witnesses, and how can you make sure the evidence is
that's
preserved?
The origin of people. We almost put an innocent person to death because the case might get reversed 20 years later, and the state might have to drop it because the witnesses are gone. Well, that person's not innocent. He just was never found guilty of that offense. No court in this country ever declares you to be innocent. When you're tried, you're found not guilty. but you're never declared to be innocent. Now, there are a few countries in the world that do that, but, I think probably the good Lord's the only person that knows whether you're innocent or not. But
when I worked as a reporter, I did a lot of interviews with judges, but one question that I never thought to ask or got a chance to, and this falls right along with appeals, and that is when you have one of those last-minute stay of executions. They're the death penalty is about to be imposed, and there's somebody waiting breathlessly by a phone call from the governor or whatever. What are some reasons that are legitimate for staying in an execution at the last minute?
A legitimate reason, and this would hardly ever come up, would be newly discovered evidence, let's say.
Something that they didn't have at trial.
Somebody comes out of a coma in the hospital, and everybody knew he's come out of a coma. No, that you're executing the wrong man. But they're not filing them because of that. They're filing them, the recent one, you hadn't proved that this wouldn't be absolutely painless. Nobody can prove that.
Yeah.
They're coming up with absolutely frivolous reasons. But my scenario, that newly discovered evidence that wasn't available at the time of the trial, but that is going to be so rare.
Now, is it only the governor that can grant that stay?
Yeah, and don't get no. You got a whole series of judges that can. Everybody from the trial judge, they have to kind of go in order. They go to the trial judge first, then they go to the Court of Appeals, blah, 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 on up. So up to the Supreme Court. But you're probably talking about a commutation going from death to life without.
Or something, we want to review the evidence yet one more time, so we're going to stay this execution.
Our governors have a history generally, and I'm not so sure they're even empowered to do that, but they can basically set aside a death verdict and give someone life without. And a lot of people think, well, life without that means something. Most people don't know that 10 years ago the legislature created this window that said, well, if you're serving a life without sentence, but
life without parole.
Yeah, life without parole, I'm sorry. And you're serving life without parole, but some of your priors were in this category, you can file to have it reviewed, and if the judge agrees, you can be lifted from that sentence, and you'll just be on a straight life sentence.
Which means you could get parole at some point.
Yeah, and I finally tried one, and one of the lawyers said, well, you're the only judge here that had in the courthouse that hadn't granted one yet. And I said, I didn't even know the things were being filed. And it's, of course, I tried my best when someone had all those felonies. You got a videotape of everything to give him a talk and say, I don't care what you do. I like trying cases, but, life without is a long, long time, and you're taking a terrible risk. You've been offered 20 years. You really need to talk to your lawyer again about taking it.
Okay, a follow-up. If somebody's, let's say, had a life sentence.
LWOP.
And 20, 30 years go by, and the prisoner is released back into society.
You're talking about straight life sentence?
Yeah, straight life sentence.
They wouldn't serve that long, well, maybe 14.
But here's the thing. How are they going to support themselves? What is to keep them from going right back to a life of crime because they have no other choice?
That's exactly right. It's funny. We generally, and I have the person here that did it, generally don't have problem placing felons that are actually still in custody on work release in businesses because the businesses say, great, you're drug testing them. If they don't get here on time, you can revoke them, put them back in the penitentiary. But the minute that they're actually released, well, we don't want them now. That's a felon. And it's because we had their finger on them, they thought it was great, but after they're completely released, so...
Well, if nobody's going to hire them and they don't have really any sellable skills, and the family a lot of times don't want them either...
What do you do?
Especially if they don't want them to be dependent on them.
Well, we need to get a little better. I mean, I'm all for punishment, but I'm also all for when you've served your sentence.
When you've done your time.
Unless you're a habitual thief. I would let a habitual thief do manual labor, but I wouldn't let him run my cash register. It'd be that kind of thing because thieves tend to be thieves. But there are other things that thieves can do. It's just I wouldn't trust them with the money.
When I worked at a middle school, I had opportunities on Saturdays to work with work-release prisoners.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, they were thrilled to be out there, not behind bars for the day. And, and a restaurant nearby donated a barbecue lunch, and we fed them. And they turned in some pretty good work. We put together some computer labs that way.
About once a year, Matt Green and I would take. Now they were not prisoners, but people sentenced to community service, and generally we'd pick one of the parks to clean up. And we were doing Langen Park a lot.
Yeah, we were doing playground cleanup.
We would have one time we had 250 people out there. Now they were a little younger, so getting them off their cell phones and all of that. I felt like I needed to be like our friend in Cool Hand Luke and be on a horse, and
with those mirror sunglasses.
Yeah, exactly. But listen, they were cutting down trees, we were raking the algae out of the lake. They didn't want to get in that water, so I finally just got my boots on and got in that little nasty mud. So that gave them courage, and we got it cleaned up.
The only time I ever got nervous, I had to ride in the back of a box truck with about 7 or 8 work-release prisoners, and there's this really beautiful woman driving a car up behind us, and of course they were making a few lewd comments here and there. But I thought about it later. Those guys could have just killed me right there in the truck.
Yeah, but they have to stay in longer.
Yeah,
but they don't care about going in and out. If they were so frightened of prison, they wouldn't keep going back.
But they were in like halfway houses anyhow. They were on their way to parole.
That's what I've told you before. When you see 35,000 people in the penitentiaries in Alabama, about 5,000 of those are living in your neighborhood. They're not in the penitentiary. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a big scam on that.
Oh, that was the wrong time, Q. Sorry.
Yeah. We got to step into a break, folks. We'll be back right after the break. Now, we've got the guns here tonight. This is Judge Rusty Johnston giving a big shout-out to Highlands, North Carolina, where I've got some friends that I know is listening. It's a great part of the country, great part of the state. We were talking about work release and cleanup and all, and one of our Armed Alabama staff here, I'll just mention the first name, Lee. He was my probation officer, and I might have told you the story in the past, but anyway, bears repeating. Young lady, young girl, I was explaining her that what she was going to have to do on probation, which, most of us in our everyday lives do things like that. You've got to report, do this, do that. And you could just see the sneer on her face, like, I'm not about to do that. And I finally said, you're giving me an impression you don't intend to comply with probation. She said, I'm not going to do all that. And it was a felony sentence. And I said, well, I guess you just better go to the jail right now. And Lee's one of the ones that grabbed her. Maybe you were alone at first. She turned into like the Incredible Hulk, a wildcat. Before it was over, I think it took 6 men to take her to the floor. I mean, she couldn't have weighed 90 pounds, 80 pounds. It was really something. Now, I got a good ringside seat to it all without getting dirty, but it's amazing how people can switch just like that. And the strength, the strength that somebody has trying to escape, they've got all the incentive in the world to get away. You can break it off when you're trying to stop them thinking, I don't want to get hurt. I'm letting go. You always
Rusty,
pick them up later.
I just can't understand how a person grows up and adopts this philosophy that nobody, and I mean nobody,
will tell them
ever going to tell me what to do. I don't care who you are or what your station in life is. There is somebody out there that is in a proper position to tell you what to do, like your boss, or in my case, my wife.
I'm doing the voir dire of the jury first, and I ask them their name and all that. Well, I get to, he looks like he's about 20, but he's got sunglasses on. He's slouched back in his chair, and I don't know, the switch got hit. And I said, unless those are for medical reasons, get them off! And they weren't, of course, thank goodness. But his just attitude looked like, why am I even here?
If you want to really see what respect a lot of people have for the courts Just go down to Government Plaza and look at the line of people going into the court side.
People used to kind of dress up.
Yeah, if I was going to court, regardless as a defendant or whatever, I'd at least go dress casual.
You'd be
something.
surprised how much difference it makes if a young man is accused of something. If he's got on just khakis and a polo shirt, I'm thinking, well, he's a con man, but at least he's smart enough to be a con man.
Yeah.
And he doesn't come in with his hood clothes on. And there are plenty of them that come in with the hood clothes on that they generally commit the crimes in.
Or pajamas and flip-flops.
Oh, in the
like
jurors,
they just come in from Walmart or something.
I'll give you some. I had a woman, I hated taking excuses from jurors, but, there were certain excuses that if you looked them up in the code, you knew what they were. But woman says, I cannot serve past Thursday. And really the bulk of the cases are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I was going to let her off, and I said, do you mind if I ask why? She says, I'm having an abortion Thursday morning. And I usually think of something kind of smart to come back. I said, well, good luck. Then I have a woman that says, I don't think I can serve because I'm extremely prejudiced. She was kind of a country white woman. And I said, I assume that means against black people? She says, that's right. And I said, we're running out of jurors. And I said, well, let me ask you this. If one white person was suing another white person over a contract, breach of contract, could you be fair in a case like that? Oh, yeah. And I said, we put a note down, do not send her to any cases where any blacks are involved in the litigation. And I thought, I thought she was coming up that with just to get off, but apparently she's telling the truth. But what time is jury service over? I said, well, we're usually over 4:35. Well, I got school, What school do you go to? The so-and-so school of massage therapy. Mm-hmm. Now, should we need massage therapists? But that kind of went.
I've got a philosophy about jury duty, and I've only served one time on a federal jury for a counterfeiting case, which is another whole story. But I feel like everybody now. Sometimes you may have a real legitimate excuse, but otherwise, everybody should cheerfully, happily serve on a jury.
Well,
because
the one thing we don't do a good enough job,
what if
Charlie,
you were the defendant and you couldn't find 12 people?
I'll do it down here. I always tell them that. When you're called for jury service here in almost every circuit in the state, you serve for a few days. You don't serve for 10 weeks like on some case in California.
If you're picked at all.
Yeah, that's right. So the worst inconvenience might be coming Monday. You're gone. If you're picked, you might stay till 5. If you're not picked, you're gone by noon every day. But that is the longest case I tried in 18 years, I think, was 4 weeks. And I had one or two that went 3 weeks, a fair number, a good many that went 2. But 90% of 90% of civil cases were a week or less, and 99% of criminal cases were 3 days or less.
Are employers required to excuse you for jury duty?
They're required to excuse you. They can't fire you. The problem, and we've done a cost shifting. We don't pay jurors much money, but we require the employers to pay the regular salary. The problem becomes when it's an out-of-state employer that I can't bring into court and put in jail.
Like the home offices in Ohio.
Yeah,
or something.
Well, we had a lot of people that would work in Mississippi, and so sometimes I'd have to call the employers and just kind of be nice to them on the phone, saying, "Now, we need her for one more day. Is that going to work out?" And I'd tell them, I'm sure you want decent people to serve. If your company's ever sued, let's see if we can get Solomon in before the show's over. Hey, Solomon.
Judge,
how are you?
Really good to hear you there talking. Are you able to hear me well?
I can hear you great.
Yeah, listen. Thank you for speaking on this topic. And it's so important that we have good people from our community serve as members of the jury. And I am a doctor, and I have never, in the last 40 years, written a letter for anyone to be excused from jury duty.
Right. And, if it's a legitimate medical problem, no problem. But I had people coming up, hey, he's got a back problem. And I'd say, well, so do I. I mean, mine was probably worse. I said, we take a break every 45 minutes. You can stretch. You can, and by the way, I've had plenty of doctors serving on juries. There's kind of a myth. I've had plenty of doctors serving on juries. In fact, most of them want to.
Yeah. And I have. I was never called. I was called, but I was put in the diary.
Yeah.
But my panel was never called as far as state.
But you went down there, and that's the key.
The feds.
Yeah.
I was put in the diary, and the prosecutor. I was always the first guy that he bumped off.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And I knew all the lawyers that were there. So,
to show you the kind of traffic or the caseload between us and federal court, I tried more cases one year than the entire U.S. District Court, Southern District of Alabama, jury trials. All of the judges, all the magistrates tried together. I mean, we try all over the country. The state courts, I think, try 90% of the criminal and civil cases. That's why they can pay better over there. Plus, they have a printing press, and they can pay more.
Yeah.
But thank you for that, Solomon. I got to wind it up here, and we'll see everybody next week. But I'll mention though, some people say, why I never served on a jury? Those names are picked from the driver's license list and the non-driver's ID. So as long as you've got one of those, it's randomly each time, and it's fairly big. The county is the same as the circuit, fairly big area. But come down, you'd be amazed how many people just don't ever bother to come down, and I think
it's part of your citizenship.
I do too. And most people, I've never had anybody tell me they did not enjoy it after it was over. Almost all of them. Remember, we're going to have Matt Canovey next week. We'll have a lot of other good things going on next week. And look at Patreon. Go to, first off, Facebook page or our website. It's the best place for information. Go there. You can get all our information. And we'll do our private chat the week after next. And stay tuned for next week. You can hear the guy that taught me really how to shoot, Matt Canovey. He has also The Gun Show with Matt Canovey up in Springfield, Missouri, that I've hosted a number of times. Great show. And that is his favorite song. I can't believe you're playing it. We'll see you next week.